Hello, Latin 3. We are now on chapter 72, the Seizure of the Fleece. Now that they've escaped, he can actually go on the mission. The whole reason for the whole thing, we've finally gotten to it. It's almost as though in Greek mythology, it's not about the completion of the story so much it is about the journey along the way. Whereas with the Romans, it's very much about the completion of the story. If you look at Roman versus Greek mythology too, Greeks are always going somewhere to get some sort of MacGuffin that didn't really matter, but the journey was really cool. Whereas with Romans, it's I protected my homeland. Either I burned my hand off, or I threw myself in the water, or I ambushed these guys, or one guy ran around in circles while three guys who were wounded chased him and then they died. Whatever. But for the Greeks, it was always about the journey. It really was. Like, to the point where if there's a prophecy, we'll just wrap that up in the last three, lines of the last chapter even. It's very 1960s comic books, which, quite frankly, that makes sense because comic books are our version of mythology. We have supernatural beings, and depending on which one you go with, DC is about the gods, Marvel is about the demigods, and you get all kinds of cool stuff in there. There's a podcast about that. Anyway, chapter 72, the seizure of the fleece, right? On the following day of that day, so the day after tomorrow, Jason, along with his allies, set sail at first light. And they rowed the oars. They strained at the oars. They rowed the oars into ideal weather for sailing at that place, and in which place Medea had shown to them where the fleece was hidden. Okay, so this nice weather took them to their mission because we're wrapping up the story now. Because really, it's not about the golden fleece; it's about Medea being crazy. So really, it's the crazy women that you brought along on the trip. Let's see. When they had come there, Jason departed onto the land. A lot of people like to say that. I prefer just to say disembarked, but whichever one sounds more epic to you. And he left behind his allies at the sea, who would be a guard for the ship. He himself sprinted into the woods with Medea. A few miles through the woods, after he'd progressed or gone a few miles into the woods or through the woods, he saw the fleece which he had been seeking hanging from a tree. However, to abscond with the with it being the fleece, and notice velus is actually a neuter singular. So to abscond with it, however, was of the greatest difficulty. Not only was the place itself guarded by excellence, or guarded excellently, both by nature and by skill. In other words, imagine a really well-built citadel built into a mountain. Like, you both have nature and human skill in making this thing, right? But also, there was a certain dragon of horrible appearance guarding the tree. Just because. Then Medea, who, as we have demonstrated above, interesting that Ritchie's uses a first-person verb there, as we have demonstrated above, had the greatest knowledge of medicine. She snatched or ripped down a branch which was near the tree, or a branch from a nearby tree, rather, and sprinkled it with poison. I would point out again that really this is the same trick. She's good at herbs and juices and stuff like that. Once she had done this, she approached to that spot, and she sprinkled the dragon with poison, who had been laying there, or who was awaiting them with its mouth wide open, with its jaws wide open. It was awaiting their arrival. Then, while the dragon was slept, overwhelmed by sleep, I don't like Ritchie on that one, Jason snatched down the golden fleece from the tree, and with Medea, he sprinted away as quickly as possible. or sprinted back. I love that at the end of the day, the golden fleece was just hanging in a tree. Like after everything else, it's just like, well, we kind of have to wrap up this story, so it was just hanging in a tree. On some levels, it makes sense because this place, you had the Strophares, right? You had the Simpligares. You had a king who was guarding it. You had the place was remote and nobody knew where it was. And on top of that, there was a dragon. So why not just hang it in a tree? But also, why not go the extra mile and, like, I don't know, put it in the bottom shelf of a dresser somewhere or something. But anyway, that's 72. Kind of fun stuff. Very interesting what the Greeks thought was a mundane thing and what they thought was a supernatural thing. And also we saw a dragon completely done in by essential oils. All right, I'm going to push the button now.